Good morning. Just waiting for a couple other people um, for Zoom to let them in, and then we will get started today. Welcome to this week's Grow, where we gather to recharge, organize, and work here as members of MWEG. I am Rachel Albertson. I'm the Director of Events for MWEG. Today, we're going to be talking about managing the rapid news cycle with our Director of Media Literacy, Meredith Gardner, and Lisa Tingy, who is our Principled Citizen Program Specialist. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to them to talk about this topic. And if you have questions, please feel free to put any of your questions in the chat and we can answer those throughout and leave some time at the end. So Meredith and Lisa, I'll turn the time over to you.
Okay, awesome. Can you see me okay? Okay. I'm just gonna stop my screen share for a second while we get going here. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. My name is Meredith Gardner, and I'm the Director of Media Literacy for MWEG, and I'm really excited to be here talking with you all about this and with Lisa here. Lisa has a lot of great insights too, but I'm the Director of Media Literacy for MWEG, and I live in Texas. And Lisa, you can go ahead and introduce yourself too.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be here, and I do hope that you do take this as a conversation. We definitely want to see your comments and involve you in this discussion. I'm as Rachel said, I'm the Principled Citizen Program Specialist, and I live in Kansas City.
Okay, awesome.
Mhm.
And today we wanted to talk with you guys because we've been seeing a lot on social media and in our community spaces at MWEG, people saying that they're really struggling to know how to stay informed while maintaining their sanity. I think there was even a post just yesterday in MWEG's community spaces, and I think I checked on Facebook, this Facebook discussion group, and there were like 138 responses already. And it was just posted last night asking how people were doing with the news cycle. And I think almost, if not everyone, said they were really struggling with it. So really hoping to offer you some suggestions today.
Yeah, we know that our members, I mean, if you're here, we know that you're the type who wants to be involved in your community, who wants to be really proactive about these things, you're usually very informed about what's going on. But with the onslaught of news that we have right now, it can be really easy and how quickly everything's happening, it can just be so easy to either retreat completely or to feel really hopeless, like there's nothing that you can do. It doesn't really matter anyway.
Yeah. And so we're here just to give you some ideas. We're going to give you a lot of ideas, but we're not here to overwhelm you. So please don't at all feel like you need to do everything that we say. That's not the case. We want you to pick out the things that you feel like are going to work for you in your life. And we know everyone's life is different. And so there's no right or wrong answer here. Our goal is for you to feel like you can function and still contribute as a citizen and also continue to find hope and joy in your life and not get so consumed by the news cycle that you can't function. Our co-executive directors Emma and Jen gave a really great short Facebook live or Instagram live a couple of nights ago, and they talked about how the day was really overwhelming. There was a lot of news that day, and I believe it was Jen mentioned that we should do our best to try to just do the next right thing. And I think that's a great motto. So as you listen today, try to think about like, well, what is the next right thing I can do um, as a good citizen and as a good media consumer, and what will help me not to get so overwhelmed. So
Yeah.
there's first a couple things we just want to point out. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah. So, social media, news outlets, apps, all of these things are competing for our attention. That's what they want. But we know that our attention is a limited resource. And so I was thinking about this and about, I have 4 kids. Meredith, I know you have 5
Five
kids.
kids. Yeah.
So this is kind of a shared experience, I know, and some of you may relate, where you're in your house and almost comically every single child wants something and they all want it from you right now, and they have no, they're all begging for your attention. They have no regard or recognition, even that there are other people in the room also asking you questions at the same exact time, and everybody wants it right now. And it just made me think it was such an apt comparison for what the landscape feels like for news and social media. There's no regard that they in fact they know that you have other people competing for your attention, and so they're doing everything they can to be the one that secures it, right? And at the same time, you think it would be insanity to just sit there and like bask in that environment, like, yes, kids, yeah, all of you ask me, just like, just but that's what we do. That is what we do. And it's no wonder that we're feeling overstimulated. Right. And so you have to go back and think, when I'm in that situation with my children, what do? Sometimes I walk out of the room and get a minute to collect myself so I can handle it. And then you go one by one, right? You ask the first child or by priority, if someone's bleeding or whatever, you go to that child, figure that thing out, and then move on to the next. And sometimes they can figure it out on their own. And, so just kind of think of that, keep that analogy in the back of your mind as we're talking about this, because it really is applicable in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that analogy that you shared, and I can totally relate. It's something that happens in my house almost every day. So I think it's also important to think about how sometimes, unfortunately, our political leaders function that way a little bit too, in that they want us to be a little bit distracted or feel overwhelmed and feel hopeless to make a difference. And we don't want you to feel that way. We don't want you to disengage. And so something we suggest first doing is consider your goals for your news consumption and what in your job. And by that I mean we want you to know what's happening in the world, but there's a balance there, right? And so for me, my job for MWIG, part of my job is to keep track of the news and to be aware of everything that's happening in the country that's related to MWIG's mission of promoting ethical government and building women leaders. And that is a hard job. Like it has taken me a lot of recalibration, even in the last couple of months, to figure out a balance in my own life, right? And I know, and this is my job, right? But I know that there's other people who love to watch the news just because that's what they love to do. But it's important to know that even I can't do all of all of this work on my own. There's no way I can know everything that's happening related to MWIG. We have advocacy directors, we have executive directors, we have volunteers who also watch. And so I just think it's important to recognize that you have an important job and role in your life, and you don't have to make consuming the news, you don't have to feel like that has to be your job. You can rely on other experts, and you can rely on MWIG to help you know what's a priority. Obviously, we're not going to encourage you to only listen to MWIG, but we do feel like it's okay for you to give yourself permission to focus on life outside of the news.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
I already am unmuted.
'Cause-
Yes. Do you follow Dr. Becky? I don't, she's like a parenting expert.
oh yeah, like Good Inside.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually do.
Okay. So she talks about this a lot. She talks about remembering what your job is as a parent, right? And so that because oftentimes we can feel overwhelmed by all the things that need to get done. But if you remember, just focus on what is your job, then it helps you not to feel deficient for not doing everyone else's job. So it just relates exactly in that same way. What is your job right now? And off the top of your head, you might be thinking about all the paid or unpaid labor that you do. Maybe you're a teacher or an attorney or a full-time caregiver. We need to be able to focus on our jobs and do them well within our own spheres of influence, regardless of what's happening in the news. It needs to remain a focus. But we also have a less recognized job, one that we just haven't prioritized as a country for the past several decades, and that is of being a good principled citizen. That really is an important job that we all need to recognize and take that responsibility on. So it doesn't mean that it is your full-time job, but being informed and recognizing your influence is a part of that. So it's really important that we learn how to use our time effectively, get that information we need, and then take on issues that are important to you. But it doesn't require you to be tuned into the news or social media all the time, or even most of the time, because that really is what leads to this, that feeling of overwhelm, overstimulation, and hopelessness overall. Um, so yes, be informed, but you don't have to be an expert at everything. And when you need to form an opinion about something that you don't have a lot of expertise in, you should feel humble enough to seek out diverse opinions from those who actually do have experience, right? We don't want to be those people that the Dunning-Kruger effect, where the people who know the least about something are the most confident in what they, thinking that they know the most about it, and the people who know the most about a topic realize how little they do know because they know so much. So just recognizing, being humble, finding that humility, and looking to experts when we do want to form a strong opinion about something.
Yeah, I love that mention of the Dunning-Kruger effect and how we can often be confident that we know something, but perhaps we don't. And I just want to reiterate that it is such a balance here, right?
Mhm.
Because like we have to be humble in what we don't know. We have to seek out what we don't know to form a good opinion. We want to be connected, but we don't want to be overwhelmed. And like we recognize what a tenuous balance that can be to strike. So once again, we just encourage you, if you're feeling overwhelmed right now, to try some different things and see what makes a difference. And I know for me, I've had to get a little bit uncomfortable in this, trying new things. But we're gonna move on and give you some tips for engaging with the media in daily life. And so we're gonna share a little bit about our own experiences, and then we're also gonna give you some ideas because we've had a lot of discussions about this internally within MWIG leaders. So we're gonna give you some of their suggestions as well. And like I said, see what sticks out to you that feels applicable to you. Um, and we'd love to hear any suggestions you have as well in the comments.
Yes, please do leave that in the comments or raise your hand, and we can have you come on screen too and talk about it. After the election, it was a very busy season for MWEG. Many, many, many hours spent on my phone doing work, and I recognized the toll it was taking on me. And so I downloaded an app called ClearSpace, and it's one of those apps that kind of like forces you to do what you actually want to do. But it and you can, the free version only lets you do it to one app, which is all I needed it. I needed it for Instagram. I was spending like hours a day on this app. And so you set it to whatever app that you are having trouble with. And if you ever want to use the app, when you click it, it pulls you onto this other app. It makes you do a deep breath, like breathe in, breathe out. And then it shows you a quote about, it's every time it's a different quote, and it's about, time being a limited resource, or like, is this how you want to live your life, kind of thing, to make you rethink your life choices. And then it asks you again, are you sure you want to, are you sure you want to do this? And then once you do, then you say how long you want to be on the app. So a couple things that taught me: one, just how faster time flies when you're online. I mean, I always knew that. I knew that. But when I would say, oh, 10 minutes is fine, 10 minutes, and then it shuts down after 10 minutes, I'm like, what? How was that 10 minutes? That's incredible. And then if you can't just say ignore, you have to go through that whole process again. If you're in the, if you're in the middle of reading something that's really important that you wanted to finish, you have to go through and do your breath and read your quote and say yes again, and then say how much time again. And so that was very eye-opening to me. The other thing that was really helpful, that has been instructive to me, is it has shown me which voices I really get benefit from. So when I go on, I know I have limited time, and I go exactly immediately to those people. If there was something about the bird flu that I was like, I need to, there's an epidemiologist that I follow that I really trust. So I was like, I need to get her take on this. And so I immediately went there, right? Um, or rather than like kind of scrolling and seeing what they tell me I should listen to, it helped me to really prioritize and realize who is actually helping me, or who, if I needed just some time to wind down and have a laugh, who really provides that for me. So that was very helpful. Um, but maybe you've tried these kind of apps or these timers or whatever, and they don't work for you. So maybe you could consider setting a physical boundary around it. For example, your bedroom could be a news-free zone. You don't read the news in your bedroom. You set that hard line. Or maybe it's your car. Instead of listening to the news in the car, you're going to listen to music this time, or sit in silence. Reteach yourself how to be in silence and how to sit with your own thoughts. Um, I've also done it before. Where I will plug my phone in when I'm home and kind of make it be like a landline again. So it's not in my back pocket, easily accessible. It's in the other room. And, sometimes just getting up is enough of a deterrent to make you not go do it. So these are some like simple options that you could do. But then I also wanted you to think about having a balanced media diet. So we talk a lot about that at MWEG as far as perspectives go, like making sure that you're not always listening to one perspective, and you're, checking the bias of these different sites that you're getting your news from. But I also want to talk about it in regards to the emotion and the weight of the media that we're consuming. Um, because if we're filling our minds with just chaos and we don't offer anything to counter that, it affects our well-being. And, I know none of us here want to be totally ignorant to the news or what's going on in the world, but there's a lot of room between, over here sticking your head in the ground and ignoring it all, and literally just sitting in a pool of chaos, chaos and sadness and despair. We don't need to be sitting in it all the time, right? So thinking about how much time you're spending with media that really weighs heavily on your mind, and media that really lifts you up and gives you a boost, and really trying to balance that a little bit more, so because they really go hand in hand.
Yeah, I love that actually. And there was a question about that point about having a balanced diet and not getting consumed by the negative so much in our MWIG Central space that I want to make sure I'll address at the end, because I have some, like, they were looking for specific outlets, and I have some recommendations. Um,
Awesome.
but before I share that, I'll just talk a little bit about my own experience trying to manage my news consumption. I would say it's a really big challenge. So the election season is a really busy season for Amway, like Lisa said, and I quickly realized, especially as we approached the end of it, that I was going to need to restructure my media habits, because it was just like taking up too much of my day. And it's just not like, I just don't believe that anybody can feel um, the amount of like presence and joy in their life if they're constantly plugging it into the news. And it's my job, and I'm saying that. So please, like, don't, like I said before, don't feel like you need to be plugged in all the time. And so I've had to do a lot of trial and error to figure out how I can limit my news consumption, because for a while I always felt like, oh, I need to have all my alerts turned on my phone, and I need to make sure I know, I need to check in before I go to bed and see what's happening. And I've learned that I don't really need to do that. So some things that I've done, or are I try to contain my news consumption to certain times of day. So, like work hours. So when I'm working during the day, I consume the news. Sometimes I check in the morning. Sometimes I check in at dinner time, or I listen to a podcast while I'm doing housework. But like Lisa mentioned earlier, I've tried to create like boxes for around how I consume the news and limit it, so I'm not getting dinged all the time by all the things happening. So create a routine if you can. Um, it used to be, I've talked about this before, that like people would get the newspaper and they would sit and read it in the morning or in the evening, or their news consumption would be watching the nightly news at dinner time. And with social media, it just bleeds into um, our all hours of the day, right? If you follow any kind of news, outlets or news influencers, you can see news all the time. And we got to try to get back to that habit of creating a news consumption routine and letting it just be part of our day and not all of our day. I mentioned turning off notifications on news apps. So I have almost all of my notifications turned off. Otherwise, I'll be getting dinged all the time. I also use something called Brick. You might have seen ads for it. It's a little, I wish I had brought it upstairs with me. It's down in my kitchen, and it's a little magnet that sits on my fridge, and it goes with an app. It looks like this. I don't know if you can see it, but you go in the app, you select which apps you want it to block, and then you have to scan. You scan the little magnet, or you don't have to use the magnet to turn it on. You can just use your phone it's called bricking your phone. And so then those apps are completely blocked. And to unblock them, you have to actually physically go scan the magnet um, to get access to those apps again. And this has been really helpful to me because I keep it across the house, and it actually does take some effort. It's like clear space with Lisa. Like you have to say, like, do I really want to get on? But for me, that's looked like blocking all social media and news and things like that while I'm not working. And then I brick my phone and I can't even see it. And I can keep it that way for as long as I want. And that's been super helpful for family time or for church time, so that I'm not just like automatically checking something. It's also good to set aside purposeful times for breaks from news related info. So I have my boxes for consuming news, and then I have boxes that are specifically for I will not consume news during this time. For me, that's usually when I'm in the car. I listen to like a fun audiobook, like something light, fiction or music. Also when I'm working out, I only listen to music or audiobooks, and I purposely will not check into any news at that time. So those are just a few of my suggestions. Another thing we're doing in my house this week, and I know Lisa's done in her house, that's actually really hard, is we're doing a screen-free week as a house, and that's really helping us reset um, our social media and internet time. And so for adults, that means like we can only use screens. Obviously, I'm on a screen right now during work hours. But outside of work hours, it's been really helpful to us um, think about, well, what can I do instead of getting on Instagram, or what can I do instead of turning on a show? So that's another suggestion I have. Lisa has some other suggestions from our MLEG leaders and volunteers to share with you.
Yeah, do you have that up on the screen?
You're both muted.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Okay, let me try to share it.
Okay, Meredith's going to share these suggestions up on the screen here. These are suggestions that came from, so on when you become a volunteer with MWEG, you can join our internal, it's called Base Camp, it's the internal communications there, and there's a lot of good support and discussions there too. So that's another little perk of volunteering. But this list came from a lot of the suggestions from volunteers there.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. But I really want to, while we're kind of like looking over this list, I'd love to hear from you all, everyone listening here, what are some things that you have done personally to help fight that overwhelm? I'm checking here to see. I don't think anybody's hands are up yet, but yeah, go either if you're willing to come on screen, we'd love to see you, or you can type something in the chat. Let's see here. I do want to, Camille had a good comment here. Just saying that narrowing down the possibilities helps a lot. It took a lot of years to know which ones I want to pay attention to, but it's not something that you can easily pass on to someone else. You have to kind of go through that process yourself, that it's part of the education process. And I totally agree.
Camille, do you have anything else you want to say about that?
I just want to say, I'd I'd love to pass on where I've landed, but I realize that it might be, it might have a certain leaning. I need to be careful about doing that, just like we have to be careful about expressing our opinions. But lately, I find myself, I will say that I've come to really appreciate the New York Times opinion podcast, which is there's two that have opinion in it. The one that I really like is the short one. It's 10 minutes and they hit one topic really, and they have an expert talking, and it almost always, it's the one that brought me on election day, is the one that brought me back to life. Let me just say that. It just hits, it just hits it just right. I have others too, but now my problem is that I've fallen into knowing what I like to read so much or listen to, that I have to remember that, wait a minute, all these call to actions that are coming at me, I really want to do that more than I want to listen, because my time is limited. So it's hard.
Thank you. That was really, I love that. And I love that recommendation. I'm gonna have to check that one out. I haven't listened to that one yet. Karen Hall, I love this. I mean, the simplicity of it in the comments says, sometimes I just take a break. I can't watch the news or check the news until tomorrow. And then I have time to center myself and prepare for the stress. And when you said time to center myself, in the, or how I said in that app that they make you take a breath, I can't tell you how helpful that is. I know I teach my kids, you know, all the time. We do like breathing exercises and stuff, but when you are feeling that overwhelmed, just shut it off and then take that deep breath and let it out, and then you can move on. It makes a huge difference. And Marie here said, I've limited to only one social media app, Blue Sky. Love it. Without, because it doesn't have an algorithm that pushes disinformation, and it's not owned by a billionaire. Very cool. Lizzie, I have a few key issues I want to be informed on. I can't consume content for all issues, so I choose a few that are important to me and I skip the rest. I'll skim headlines, but trust other people are on top of the issues I'm not. And this is exactly what we're talking about. We cannot solve all the world's problems, but we absolutely can make a difference on some issues. So remembering that and putting trust in each other, that will together we can kind of cover it. Someone else has said, I've been watching the PBS News Hour. It's concise. Yes. The other nice thing about that, I don't know how you're watching it. Maybe you are watching it on your phone, but if you're watching it on a different device that maybe doesn't have all those other distractions, then that can also be helpful, because I noticed that too. I often, there's some people that I do get my news from on Instagram, but when I'm on, then it very easily rolls into, spending time on all sorts of other things when I really only meant to find out about this one thing. So getting your news in a different format, that's one of the reasons that Meredith has you should talk about it after. I think you are talking about after, but MWIC has several different newsletters. We have our Space on Central, that's a separate app that is not connected to all these other things. It just, if you can find places that are not connected to all these other distractions, then that's a helpful way to do it as well.
Yeah, Lisa and Meredith, I was thinking about Camille's comment and then the comment about choosing which one. And I think when MY puts out a CTA, that is an opportunity to go and kind of research and kind of do a focus news, dive, not nose dive, but on those topics, so that when you choose to respond to those letters or to write to your representatives, that you have some information to back up your opinion and your feelings as you flush those out anyway. So so that the CTAs don't become overwhelming, but that it's kind of I feel like MWAG is concise, and those are focused things that you can go and do some searches on.
I guess I'm struggling with the technology here, but I wonder too if generationally, like I think Camille and I are probably some of the older people on here right now. I don't know, but I know for me, I don't struggle so much with the social media aspect because I'm a retired teacher and I was I avoided Facebook, while I was teaching. So I have less of that problem. But I feel like as the older person in my sphere of life, I know the time with different perspectives and not relying on just a few sources. And yes, PBS and the New York Times, are very good, but I'm also finding, like, on Substack, there's a lot of really good writers, and the people that are um that basically are getting pushed out, like Paul Krugman, and some of the excellent commentators with real depth and expertise that are giving perspective on things happening more than just a headline. And, so I'm trying to filter out um, which which are the best ones. Substack is new, but it's got a lot of good material. It's just you can't read it all. And I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to come up with a grid of who are those people I can follow who are not who don't make me just rage and angry, because having a lot of emotion does not help me to be a good conduit for information to those I love, who simply emotionally and psychologically cannot handle keeping up on everything. A lot of you, if you've got kids and you're working, you can't devote the time. And it's really interesting hearing you talk about that, because there is a spectrum of different positions that we have as Mormon women for ethical government. Sorry, I'm talking too long.
No, not at all. I think that's great, Laura. And I think actually that would be a great question for you to post on MWEG Central and kind of do some gathering on there of who people follow and they would recommend, because I get a lot of help when people post that on Central myself. I love seeing what podcasts people listen to, who they're reading on Substack. So yeah, I think that's so wise of you to point out that it's important for us not to just always be consuming things that are enraging, but to also look for opinions and other content that we can trust, that is wise and that can help us hopefully like get perspective and move towards some solutions. So I appreciate you sharing that. Lisa, did you have anything else you wanted to say before we move
No,
on?
yeah, no, I just really appreciate everybody's comments, and would second that. I would love to continue this conversation in Central, where we can share links and you know, those people that we have found to be very objective, unique perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said before, there was a question about specific news outlets that we can turn to, and I think it was from you, Laura, or voices. And like I said, I would encourage you to post about that. A couple of things that came to mind. One is a great source is the Christian Science Monitor, which a lot of people are aware of, but is a very reputable national newspaper. And it is, they write in a values-based format. So actually, if you go on their website, a lot of their articles, they will say, "Why did we write this article?" And they'll say, "Oh, it's because it is linked to we link it to the value of hope, or we link it to, any other value." And I find that to be really refreshing. So that's something you can check out. Another fairly new field is called solutions journalism. And that's the idea that like that reporters shouldn't necessarily just like tell a story, but also do research on like how to solve this problem. And so if you Google solutions journalism outlets, a lot of them will come up, but a lot of the major news outlets like the New York Times, Christian Science Monitor comes up, um, Politico, they have specific sections of their newspaper. It might be a column or it might be a feature that they run regularly that is considered like a solutions-based journalism approach. So I would just encourage you, depending on, you can look at Google that, it will come up the different outlets and you can match those with whatever subscriptions or access you have. But that solutions focus can be really helpful in not feeling so bogged down by bad news all the time. Um, and then I wanted to show you a couple of MWIG. Oh, here are the apps that people suggested really quickly. I mentioned Brick. Lisa mentioned ClearSpace. There's so many focus apps out there, but one's called Freedom, one's called Cold Turkey Blocker, that if you find that like you're trying to work or do something on your computer and it's just really easy to click on news or social media, these can help. There's also any Android or Apple phone has built-in screen time managers that you can use. I use them for my kids a lot, but you can use them on yourself too. And then you can also like customize focus modes that will only bring up certain apps, when you click on I'm working, or, you can name your own focuses. So that's a few suggestions. But I wanted to give you guys MWIG resources that can help you manage your news consumption. And so one is the weekly news roundup. If you're not subscribed, we'll have to find the link and put it in the comments. I will find it when I'm done sharing this presentation and put it in the comments or the chat. But you can subscribe to it. It comes out every Friday. And it's links to one or two articles directly related to each of our areas of advocacy, and our advocacy directors all contribute to this. And so it's just a really great opportunity for you to see what's happening in areas that are important to MWIG. Obviously, there might be more areas that are important to you that are outside of MWIG, but people find this really helpful. We've gotten really good feedback on it. So I would just suggest that you subscribe. And like I said, I'll put that link in when I'm done talking here in a second. A second thing is our member newsletter. Every week we send out a member newsletter to your email. We try to keep it really short and to the point. So it explains what we're working on and what's grabbing our attention and any calls to action that we've issued recently. So I would just encourage you to open that and give it a quick read. We have our social media accounts if you like to be on social media. If you don't like to be on social media, that's the whole reason we created MWIG Central. So there's a completely separate space for you. If you're not on MWIG Central, it's a great app. I would highly recommend registering for it. It's also available on desktop. I know sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want another app on my phone, and I totally get that. So you don't have to use it on an app. You can just use it on your computer, and it functions just the same. We also have our calls to action and our letter writing tools. And in our calls to action, we've issued some this week even. We always include links to news articles to help you be informed before you write anything. But those are meant to help you actually engage and be proactive. And then internal discussion spaces for volunteers. One of the benefits of volunteering with us is that we all work remotely on Basecamp is the platform we used, and on Basecamp there's discussion spaces that are just for our volunteers and our staff to talk about news issues, and that is a really great community too. So that's just a plug for volunteering if you really want even more spaces to talk about. So that's what MWIG provides, and Lisa, I'm going to turn it back to you while I find that link to the news roundup really quick.
Okay. Yeah, so overall, we just really hope that these resources are going to help you find your focus, wherever that focus may be. Figure out what your job is in regards to being a good citizen, and then focus in on that and what you can do. Going back to this analogy of the kids everywhere, I was also thinking about how I've been with, especially when I had really little kids, I would meet up with a friend who didn't have kids, and we'd be chatting, and I didn't even, she would kind of like seem distracted, or I don't know. I realized she couldn't. I had gotten really good at being able to tune out the noise, right, of my kids playing or whatever it is that they're doing. But because she didn't have that around her all the time, she couldn't just tune it out. And it made me think about the way we approach our advocacy. Do we want to be just making sure that we're not the person that other people are easily tuning out because we're just so repetitive and loud and we're not actually engaging, right? So if I've seen lots of posts on social media that have a message similar to, this is what I'm going to be posting about. And if you don't like it, you can mute me this year because this is what we're talking about. And I totally get that mentality because there are a lot of really important things that people need to know about that a lot of people don't know about. But if we are not engaging in a personal way on these issues and people are just muting us and tuning us out, then we're not reaching the people that we want to be reaching. We're not helping people to have new perspectives. So I would just encourage you, as you, in the same way that you don't want to be overwhelmed by your news sources, don't try to be cognizant of the way that you are sharing this news as well with your friends, with your followers, and make sure that you're engaging meaningfully when you discuss these things, so that you are a place that where people find meaningful conversation, find nuance, and find just a place that's maybe a little bit different, that they're not getting elsewhere.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lisa. And just to close us out, before we ask for any additional comments or questions, I wanted to read from our newsletter that MWEG sent out last week. There was a great quote at the end. If you didn't read it, and if you did, I'm going to repeat it anyway. But in the newsletter, they wrote, from our executive directors, "We want you to engage and to contribute to the civic health of our nation, but we also want you to maintain a healthy, well-rounded, and productive life. We want you to have room for joy and for hope. MWIC can give you extra capacity in difficult times. It will allow you to remain engaged in meaningful ways while supporting and maintaining your well-being. Together, we can do what we could not do alone." And I just want to, close by saying I thoroughly believe that. Together, we can do things we can't do alone. And that's the whole purpose of MWEG, is to band together and to support one another and to share expertise and to lift one another up. And so I would just urge you to stay engaged with us. And if you have concerns or you're struggling with something, please bring it to us, bring it to the group, and we're here to help each other.